Good afternoon and welcome to the July 10, 2025 board meeting. Welcome to my fellow board members, all the MCPS staff, community members, and people who are joining us online. So first, let's begin by standing up for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is in the back. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. We will have two board members joining us online later. And here I first ask my fellow board members to introduce themselves to establish your quorum. I want to start with our student members of the board, and today is her first meeting. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you, Julie. Anuva Malou, 48th student member of the board, and beyond excited to be here today at my first meeting.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes. Carla Silvestre, school board member at large, and I am still excited to be here with you today.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes. Welcome, Anuva. Grace Rivera-Oven, representing District 1.
Good afternoon, Brenda Wolf, District 5, and welcome, Anuva.
Good afternoon, Laura Stewart. I'm representing District 4, and I'm getting over a little virus, so that's why I have the mask. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Julie Yang, District 3. So once again, welcome. Before we go to adopt agenda, I would like to give a little bit background information. Moving into the new school years, our board meetings have a new format. We continue to have board business meeting every month. But in the months that we have two board meetings, we are putting one meeting as a work session that are focused on talking a lot about going through presentation for us to understand the system better. Another meeting will focus more heavily on action items for the board to conduct. Now, both meetings welcome public comment. That stayed the same. So with that background information, can we have a motion to approve the agenda for today?
Move approval.
Second.
There's a motion.
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion and 2 seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous with those present. Thank you very much, everyone. And then next we will go to 2.2 is future closed session resolution, report of previous closed sessions. Is there a motion to approve item 2.2, future closed session resolution, and 2.3, report of previous closed session in block?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. Thank you, everyone. That's unanimous with those present. And Dr. Taylor, this is the full boardroom.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Our viewing public from home, it might be hard to see, but it must be summer because the boardroom is packed with a lot of folks for consideration for board appointment today. And I'm thrilled to bring forward an outstanding slate of excellent leaders for the board's consideration today. When I call your name, if you could please stand, I'm going to read some wonderful things about you before the board votes on your appointment. First for consideration for the position of Deputy Chief of Transportation is Mr. Michael Lewis. And it is customary to give the applause after somebody is appointed. But clearly, we're bringing forward an outstanding candidate for consideration for this deputy chief role. Joining him today are his parents and his chosen family, Jason, Nathan, and Christopher. Mr. Lewis has been employed with Montgomery County Public Schools for 13 years. He started as a bus operator, a bus route supervisor, a transportation cluster manager, an operations manager, a supervisor, an executive director, an assistant director, and most recently as the acting director in the Department of Transportation. Mr. Lewis is honored to step into the role of Deputy Chief of Transportation, where he will lead the newly established Division of Transportation Services and usher in a new era of innovation and excellence, ensuring safe, reliable, and equitable access to education for more than 100,000 bus riders and MCPS every day.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Welcome, Ms. Montoya online. Congratulations, Mr. Lewis.
Next for consideration is Mr. Norman L. Coleman for the position of Director in the Department of Student Conduct and Appeals in the Division of Equity and Organizational Development. Joining him today is his wife Monique, sons Jonah and Joseph, and his mother-in-law Gina Stevenson, a current MCPS employee. Dr. Coleman has been employed with MCPS for 22 years as a teacher, assistant principal, principal intern, and most recently as the principal at Francis Scott Key Middle School. Shout-outs to his mother, Sarah Coleman, and sister, Crystal Coffey, both retired educators, and to his family and friends who are watching online.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Congratulations.
Next for consideration is Ms. Shannon Pattyfoot for the position of Director in the Department of Management and Budget in the Division of Financial Oversight. Ms. Pattyfoot has been employed with MCPS for 2 years as a director and the board senior analyst in the Board of Education's office. Prior to her current role, Ms. Pattyfoot worked in the private sector and in educational fields specializing in grants and financial operations. She looks forward to joining the Department of Management and Budget to support the budget development process. Shout outs to her mother, Carol, and sisters who are watching online.
Is there a motion to confirm?
So moved.
Second that?
Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Congratulations so much.
And it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. John Ander, who is the gentleman in the blue shirt who is joining us online for the position of Director in the Department of Facilities Operations. Mr. Ander brings more than 20 years of facilities and maintenance experience in managerial and administrative roles, in education, and in the private sector. He is incredibly excited about this opportunity and eager to start on the leadership vision for MCPS. Shout outs to his wife, Marion, who support him unwaveringly.
I can see her in the background there. Okay, right. Is there a motion to confirm?
So moved.
I second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Congratulations.
Next for the board's consideration is Ms. Sarah E. Deal for the position of Executive Director in the Division of Human Resources and Talent Management. Ms. Deal brings to MCPS more than 15 years of experience in talent management. She is thrilled to be joining MCPS to advance the talent strategy and operational effectiveness of our human resources in service to our staff and students. Shout outs to her friends and family who are cheering her on today, including her mom in California and her partner Robert in North Carolina.
A motion to confirm?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Congratulations.
Got a familiar MCPS face next for consideration. Dr. Lakeisha Lashley for the position of Director of the George B. Thomas Senior Learning Academy. Joining Dr. Lashley today is her husband, her two sons, Logan and Brandon, and her sister, Hazel Stevenson, cousin, Dr. Latoya Williams, and her mentor, Dr. Mira Smith. Dr. Lashley has been employed with MCPS for 27 years as a teacher, resource teacher, principal intern, assistant principal, and most recently as the principal at Fairland Elementary School. She looks forward to joining the Division of Teaching and Learning and the Board of Directors of the George B. Thomas Senior Learning Academy. Shout outs to her family and friends who are watching online from Delaware and outwards in Maryland.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Congratulations.
Next for consideration is Mrs. Katie Ramadi for the position of Executive Director in the Division of Safety and Emergency Management. Joining her today is her husband, Roy, and her son, Braden. Mrs. Ramadi has been employed with MCPS for 25 years as a teacher, staff development teacher, acting assistant principal, and most recently as a coordinator in the Division of Safety and Emergency Management. She looks forward to continuing her work with her wonderful team, many of whom are present in the back. Just checking. Shout outs to her son, Ryland, and to Mrs. Edith Lee, who are also watching.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Congratulations.
I'm pleased to introduce Mrs. Emerald J. Becker for the position of Supervisor of Central Records and Reporting in the Department of Shared Accountability in the Division of Equity and Organizational Development. Joining her today is her husband, Robert Weinstein, daughters, Jules Weinstein, and her mother-in-law, Jerry Nokes. Mrs. Becker brings to MCPS experience in record retention and reporting in the educational field. Mrs. Becker is excited to join the team MCPS to serve the community that she lives in and support MCPS students and families and schools through great records management. Shout outs to her brother, Abe Becker, who is watching online.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Congratulations.
I'm very excited, Madam President, because now we get to talk about principal placements, and this, of course, is of great community interest in our county. And first for consideration is Mr. Ahmed Adalay Khan. Mr. Adalay Khan is up for consideration as principal of James Hubert Blake High School. Joining him today is his wife, Dr. Sherry Adalay Khan, and his sons, Makai and Elijah. Mr. Adalay Khan has been employed with MCPS for 13 years as a special education teacher, special education resource teacher, assistant school administrator, assistant principal, acting principal, and most recently as the principal at Benjamin Banneker Middle School. Shout outs to his sister Lola and Faye, sisters, plural, Lola and Faye, his parents, and to his mentors, Dr. Shawan Robinson, Miss Jewel Sanders, and Miss Kimberly Bolden.
You got
So moved.
multiple applause. Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, so that's unanimous with those present. Congratulations.
There's a small delay, so just wait one more second to see my hand.
Yeah.
sometimes the internet is not at our speed.
That's right. Next for consideration by the board is Dr. Joseph D. Bostic Jr. for the position of principal at Thomas Wooten High School. Dr. Bostic has been employed with MCPS for 9 years as a teacher, team leader, content specialist, assistant school administrator, assistant principal, and most recently as the acting principal at Thomas Wooten High School. He looks forward to continuing building strong relationships with students, staff, parents, and the community members within the Thomas Wooten community. And I got to tell you, I'm disappointed that this wasn't in his printed bio. He is also a former district-wide Teacher of the Year for MCPS.
Yes, that's right.
Shout outs to his family who are watching online.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous with those present. Congratulations.
Next for the board's consideration is Mrs. Edith U. Lee for the position of principal at Whetstone Elementary School. Joining her today is her mother, Young Suk, her sisters Hester and Oriana, her brother Darren, and her son Winston Lee. Mrs. Lee has been employed with MCPS for 18 years as a teacher, resource teacher, assistant principal, and most recently as a principal intern at Argyle Middle School. She looks forward to joining the Whetstone community and building strong relationships as an inclusive learning environment where every student can thrive and achieve at a high level. Shout outs to her husband Mark, her daughters Eleanor and Vivienne, and her son Walter, who are cheering her on from South Korea.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. Ms. Montoya? I think she's. Oh, there. All right.
It's up. It was frozen. It's up.
Unanimous with those present. Congratulations.
Next for the board's consideration is Mrs. Monica G. Kellner for the position of principal at Twin Brook Elementary School. Joining her today is her husband Greg, her children Nate and Maddie, and her parents Pam and Jim Grant. Mrs. Kellner has been employed with MCPS for 20 years as a teacher, focus teacher, resource teacher, staff development teacher, assistant school administrator, assistant principal, principal intern, and most recently as the acting principal at Twin Brook Elementary School. She looks forward to continuing to serve the Twin Brook community as they work together to support student success so that they can all achieve at a high level. Shout outs to her family and friends who are watching virtually, including Mrs. Shawan Robinson, Mrs. April Longest, and Dr. Elena Murray.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous with those present.
For our last recommended appointment for this evening, I'm pleased to introduce Mrs. Stacy L. Heinz for the position of principal at Stephen Knowles School. Joining her today is her husband, Terry. Mrs. Heinz has been employed with MCPS for 25 years as a special education teacher, staff development teacher, assistant principal, and most recently as coordinator in the Department of Special Education Services. She looks forward to joining the Stephen Knowles community in this new leadership capacity. Shout outs to her supportive family who are watching online.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous with those present. Congratulations to all of you. We look forward to your great success within our MCPS system. Thank you. We'll take a minute as we settle.
going to need the right person to step up and support him. He's all person. You know what? That might be true. He's a nice guy, but he's a hot mess. No, I agree. I agree. Yeah. And I would just say, not ready. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we just want to give a minute for them to clear the room. We were giving it a minute as there are a lot of excitement in the room, and we typically have a few appointments. Today we have 13, so this is summer months. We're getting ready for the school year, so thank you for your patience. So next on the item is previous new business, and I will begin by asking our Vice President Rivera-Oven to preside over this item.
Thank you, President Yang. At the board's June 10th, 2025 meeting, a new business resolution regarding local preference for procurement contracts was presented for the board's consideration. As at the June 24, 2025 meeting, a motion and a second were received to table consideration of this resolution until today's meeting. Is there any additional discussion on this item prior to a vote?
Thank you, Ms. Rivera-Ovens. Since our welcome to board member Natalie Zimmerman online. Since our last board meeting, I received feedback from colleagues, and Ms. Wolf has suggestions of language. And prior to last board meeting, Ms. Stewart has suggestions of including Maryland. Business also in Maryland in the resolution. So the portion you see in green, where for one paragraph that's including business in Maryland, and the portion in the next resolve say will report to the board the result of the review and options for the board's consideration. So Ms. Wolf added, for consideration, for the board's consideration. It's not for implementation. It's just for board's consideration. What this is that we all recognize, I think all of us do recognize, we are at a very unusual times that never had it been before more important to strengthen our local economy. And we are emerging from Maryland's uncertain times, and the business in Maryland and in Montgomery County need our support. Maryland County government already has a local preference policy. The state of Maryland is currently studying the benefit of one. So it is time for us, and what this resolution recommends is for the school system to review and learn and explore options and study all the possible options that are out there, so that we can, for the board to consider. So this resolution is just doing that. It asks the superintendent to review the procurement practices from other agencies and develop some options for board's consideration. It's a signal that we are not only open for business, we are open for business, open to business. So thank you, Ms. Wolf, and thank you, Ms. Stewart, for your feedback. This is a collective process.
So you move to amend the
Yeah,
document?
so-
President Yang?
Yes, so I move to amend this to include the language is for board's consideration.
Okay.
That's my motion.
Thank you, President Yang. Is there a motion to amend the previous resolution? Is there a second?
Second?
Who said that? Oh, there's a second by Ms. Stewart. There is a motion and a second. Is there any discussion specific to the motion amend? A separate vote will be taken on the merits once the motion to amend is approved. Is there? Ms. Montoya.
Sorry, my hand is to address the merits.
Okay,
So I'll refrain until we do the vote on the amendment.
okay. If there's no additional discussion, there is a motion and a second to amend the previous resolution. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. That passes. Thank you. Now, is there a motion to adopt the resolution as amended?
So I can move it? Yes, so move, because I'm not
Is
used
there
to
a
it.
second?
Right, so move.
Is there
Oh, done.
okay, is there a second?
Second.
It's a second by Ms. Stewart. There is a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? Ms. Montoya.
Thank you. We were in receipt. So at the last board meeting, there were several of us that had questions in relation to various parts of the amendment. And so we were in then receipt of answers to those questions. I did ask those to be posted on the public portion so that the community can see them since they were asked in the open meeting. And so I want to make sure that we address those points because I think there was some important information that came out there that needs to be considered. So what we learned in response to my question was, what, if any, other preferences does MCPS have already in place for procurement? And the answer received was that there are no preferences for procurement of goods or services, and that the Department of Procurement follows Annotated Code Maryland Education Article 5-112. And when we look at that article, what we see is that in section Article 5-112, parens D, close parens, open parens 2, close parens, that actually specific to Montgomery County, that Montgomery County Board of Education was required to establish a minority business utilization program to facilitate the participation of responsible certified minority business enterprises in contracts awarded by the Board of Education in accordance with the competitive bidding process, bidding procedures. So it's not clear to me if we have implemented that portion yet. Maybe that's something we just need to look into as well. But the best I can tell from this information is that if any current preferences, it would be in alignment with this subsection D2. I bring that up because I think it's important to look at this not just in the context of what does the state need or the economy or the county, but what is best for Montgomery County Public Schools in that context. When we look at further, another question that was asked was about data regarding how we might expect this to impact the cost of doing business for Montgomery County Public Schools. Right? Budget is something we're always dealing with. We're always trying to find ways to maximize our dollars, to minimize waste, so that we can make sure that as much money as possible goes into the schools. And so what we learned from that question was that Montgomery County Public Schools already works with local Montgomery County and Maryland businesses. And I think that we can attest to that from looking at the vendors on our consent items and other items that come before the board to pass those contracts. There's always places from Montgomery County, maybe other counties within Maryland, or maybe just across the bridge in Virginia. And so we see evidence that we're already doing these things even without requiring formal processes or additional staffing, which I'll get to in a moment. The other information that we received is that kind of anecdotally, what has been found is that when Montgomery County Public Schools engages with smaller companies or smaller local businesses, that there's often what was termed as a ramp up of service, where they are charging more in bidding or submitting offers that are higher. And so then what happens is if we were to entertain those contracts, we might actually be paying more than we would if we entertained a contract with a vendor from another location. And I think that becomes concerning to me because, again, our dollars are always so stretched. And we actually expect that to become even more challenging because of some of the things happening on the federal level that will then trickle down to us at the state and the county. The information also indicated that in looking into the way that others have done this, for example, the Montgomery County government, that they started with a disparity study. So again, that's another cost of having to issue an RFP, hire a vendor, pay them to do this study. In addition to, if we were to do it internally, we also then have time and resources, as well as cost, because we're paying staff to do that when they might be doing something else. Additionally, the information we received was that these types of programs are often require more staffing and more offices because they have to be handled independently from procurement. It might not be reasonable to think our current procurement staffing setup would be able to just absorb this without hiring more staff and establishing more processes. So again, we're looking at cost, resources to launch, implement, and run this program. So while I definitely support small businesses and local businesses, my father is a small business person actually all my life. My job as a Board of Education member is to look out for the best interests of the school system. So it's challenging for me to understand, one, I think the need, because it seems like we're already doing this. And then also the additional cost that we would incur in trying to potentially implement something like this, even if all we're doing right now is asking for like a review or a study, because those studies, they do cost money, we can see from the boundary study vendors that we secured. So I would just offer that information to my colleagues for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Montoya.
Ms. River,
Ms.
yeah,
Yang?
thank you. I think it's a very valid that we are always mindful as we are being forward-looking and as we are being supported to all our community. It is our responsibility to look at the costs. And I see that our Chief Financial Officer is in the audience. Maybe she can highlight some of the, shed some light on this question.
Thank you. Could you just identify yourself? Thank you.
Sure. Good afternoon. Yvonne Alfonso Windsor, Chief Financial Officer. And thank you. Thank you for bringing this, for us to look at and review. There are, some costs associated, obviously, with implementing anything new, and we're going to have to look at, things. But, there's some ways, that we can look to establish some local preferences that might not be, as that the resources we might not need as many resources or to spend more money. We can look at local preferences for maybe bids over under 25,000, right under that threshold. That obviously that would not require board approval, and it's the process would go a little bit faster for those local preferences. We can look at small businesses within Montgomery County that might offer niche products or niche services, and we could that could be funded through some of our grants, right? Smaller grants that might need to be spent, in a very, timely manner, and that could, could help accelerate this process in a way, So those are some ways that we can start looking into this and figure out, how we can, support our local economy, build, relationship with our small businesses, if that's the route that we want to explore.
Thank you for that. Dr. Taylor, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things to add. The first one, which I think is an important question that Ms. Montoya asked, was, oh my gosh, are we actually following what's in COMAR, and are we adhering to that? And yes, we do have a disadvantaged and minority-owned business program, and we tag our procurement as such, so the public can see that we are awarding business to minority-owned and disadvantaged business owners. And so that is important. We are following, as was reported to the board and now to the public, we are following the procurement law as it's written and as it applies to Montgomery County. So that's an important thing to clear up. But yeah, this introduces a world of possibilities for us to look at. I will say, as a downside, it's sometimes disappointing that we have to be nudged as a school system to innovate and to look at new ways of doing things. And this resolution asks us as a school system to look at what might be versus what is. So there are a number of things that are innovative practices in other jurisdictions that they accomplish a lot of these same goals to formulate partnerships that with people that are invested in our school system, that are right here locally, that have their children in our school system, and encouraging them to be partners with us, not just as parents and as taxpayers, but also as business partners in helping us accomplish some of our goals. So this introduces great opportunity for us, and if this resolution passes, we welcome it with open arms and look forward to bringing reports back to the board of some clever ideas that we could come up with.
Thank you for that willingness.
I have a question.
Sure.
Dr. Taylor, I guess my question is to you that this should already be part of your portfolio to be able to be looking at this anyway. So is there a need for a resolution for you to do what you say you were going to do? Because one of the areas that we did discuss was procurement and how to improve procurement. So what I was hoping for was, to see, you've been on the job for a year, so there was a lot going on. But this is one of the areas that I know Yvonne has also been looking into. And I guess I just feel that we're jumping the gun with this resolution a little bit, because I think the staff and yourself are already doing this. But if you're not, and if you need this resolution to do what you say you're going to do, that's a different story.
Well, hopefully we don't need resolutions to do everything that we say we're going to do. But for whatever it's worth, we have a very hardworking procurement team. There's a lot of room for improvement in a lot of our operations, and to not only make sure that we're operating in an efficient way, but that we're crossing all of our T's and dotting all of our I's. Procurement is one of those things that does need some attention and does need some work. We are absolutely attentive to what needs to transpire in terms of following COMAR. Whether or not we have gone into the space of establishing a framework for local preference, even though we do business with local entities, we don't. Does this indicate to us the board's will for us to explore and to nudge us to create that framework? It does. I could make the argument that I'm not sure that any resolution is needed, but maybe a firm conversation. But this is also an opportunity for the board to make it known what its preferences are, and to hold us accountable as a school system to what its expectations are. So, should the board decide that that this is a priority, this becomes the system's priority. And we would develop a framework and some ideas that we would bring back. As far as resolutions go, the workload, as I'm interpreting it, is to bring back ideas of how we might versus saying you must do. And I think that this is a friendlier version to that, and gives us some opportunities that we can bring back ideas for the board's consideration before you all adopt anything and say, this is what our policy is moving forward.
Any additional comments, Mrs. Wolf?
Yeah, I want to thank you for that because my concern the last time and the reason we wanted to revise the wording a little is that it came across more as a directive to come back with something. And I think we were more interested in having you explore the possibilities. So thank you for that.
Is there any more comments?
You got
Ms. Montoya?
Ms. Stewart also.
Oh, and Ms. Stewart. Sorry, I don't know who came first. We'll let
Ms.
Ms. Montoya
Montoya.
go first?
Yes.
Okay.
No, go ahead and let Ms. Stewart first. I've already made one comment.
Okay, Ms. Stewart, look at that.
This is more in general about the procurement process. I don't believe we've had a review, at least since I've been on the board, because I know that there was some discussion on how to make sure that we're following best practices. And this also includes to make sure we're actually getting the best vendors as well, and that that we're being fair about that, even if there's a local preference. So I'm looking forward to that in the future to have that review. If it's not in at the board meeting, then in the fiscal committee might be nice.
Ms. Montoya?
Thank you. I guess my overarching question and concern is that if, at least to a certain extent, we're already doing this, however informal it may be or whatnot, with all of the issues that need to be addressed in the school system, and we all know there are many, is this the best way that we want the system to use time, money, and resources right now? I always go back to Ms. Silvestri's question because she's always said it. And so now I always think about it is what is the need, right? What problem are we trying to fix? Do we actually even have a problem here? And I'm eager to hear from my colleagues because I want to know, how do you feel? Do you feel like we have this problem such that then we need this? And I guess because however way we cut it, it does take time, resources, and money. That's just the reality.
Ms. Stewart?
Well, actually, the one time I remember maybe this coming up was in one of the first board meetings that we attended. There was a contract that was given to a different state to support, I think, some of our Hispanic students. I just remember that specifically and wondering why, when we know we have a lot of these supports right here in the county. And so that's just one instance. I have no idea why that was chosen, that company, but maybe this is a way just to have that check and balance to make sure we're using resources or educating our providers so they have a better chance of providing a service.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Anyone else? Ms. Yang?
Yes, I would like to say that the work is never ending. It's a huge school district, and then we always trying to improve in our work, and there are different departments that have different roles in the school system. And as the board, we talk a lot. If you have watched our work sessions, we talk a lot about academic performances, safety and security, but it's also our duty to review and understand how we are using our money and how we are engaging with our local community, business community. Thank you.
Okay. With that being said, Ms. Montoya. Please go.
Thank you. No, I absolutely think that procurement and, these kind of like the back of the business, right? The part that the community sometimes doesn't see. It's absolutely essential for us to make sure that those are working properly and that those have the, for lack of a better phrase, investment also in making sure that those systems are tight. And so even with that, though, I think that there are spaces in the procurement area that need to be addressed. For example, we had an emergency procurement item at the last meeting, and that helped to uncover some spaces where we needed to make sure things were in alignment. So it was wonderful. It was a great learning space for us to then realize we needed to do some review and address that. And perhaps there might be other, areas where we need to do that as well. And so even if we want to just talk about procurement, there's already some issues that need to be addressed. So again, I come back to the question of, with the issues that already need to be addressed, is this a priority of the board such that then we're having a resolution to say, hey, put this at the top of the priority list? Because that's effectively what we're doing.
Thank you, Ms. Montoya. There's any additional comments from any of my other colleagues? Ms. Zimmerman, just want to make sure. Nope. Okay, we're all good. And my final comment from me would be that I feel that if we are to tell Dr. Taylor, to do something as a Board of Education as a member, I will hope that he will do it. I don't think we need a resolution. So that is where my dilemma is. And so anyway, with that being said, if there are no further comments, then I'm going to take the vote. All those in favor of this resolution, please raise your hands. That'd be Ms. Stewart, Ms. Wolf, Ms. Yang, Ms. Silvestre, and Ms. Urbana. That would be, and Mrs. Zimmerman. All those, I got you, Natalie. All those against the resolution, please raise your hand. With that, the resolution carries. And I'm done. And I'm gladly passing this back to Ms. Yang.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. We have an audience here that has waited so patiently. The next item is number 5, public comments. And I thank you for your patience. I have some official verbiage that I need to read through. The next item on the agenda is public comment. While the board encourages public input on policy, program, and practices and will consider the comments received, it is not the board's practice during its business meeting to respond to questions, provide comment, or take action on the issue raised. This is a public meeting, and the board expects the conduct of all speakers and members of the audience to be within the bounds of proper etiquette. Inappropriate personal remarks, rude retorts, or other such behavior is out of order and will not be tolerated. Those who demonstrate disruptive or disrespectful behavior during public comments may be asked to leave the room. In addition, public comment is not the proper avenue to address specific student or employee matters. Such matters should be directed through the complaint or appeal process. Each speaker has 2 minutes to deliver comments. When your name is called, press the flag button and speak clearly into the microphone. A yellow light and a single beep indicate you have 30 seconds remaining. A red light and repeating beeps signal that time has expired. Once you have finished speaking, press the same button to turn off the microphone. Following the live testimony, audio and video testimony will be played. Actually, today we are all in person, I believe. And then copies of your comments are posted online. All right, I'm going to call the first 6 because there are 7. We can only accommodate 6 at a time. So one of you will be special at the end. Okay, so for Jaden Herrera, Aryan Ahmed, Gavin Yao, Joshua Frank, Lucas Bennett, and Lindsay Bennett. We always love it when our students come to speak. Jaden, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, board members and Superintendent Taylor. My name is Jaden Herrera. I'm a rising 8th grader at Herbert Hoover Middle School. I graduated from Wayside Elementary, and I'm in the high school class of 2030. I'm here today because I care about my education and my future. I work hard in school and want to make the most of my high school experience, but the current boundary study and academic program analysis proposals make that really hard for students like me. All 4 options would require me to attend Churchill for 9th grade and then transfer to Wooten in 10th. That means starting high school at one school and then starting over just 1 year later. For students my age, high school already brings a lot of change and pressure. Switching schools after 1 year adds even more stress, confusion, and instability. It takes time to build relationships with teachers, counselors, coaches, and classmates. These connections aren't just important for academics, they also play a big role in supporting students' mental health and overall well-being. Changing schools midstream makes it more difficult to join clubs, sports, or leadership opportunities that often begin in 9th grade and build over time. Another big concern is distance. Churchill is less than 2 miles away from my neighborhood in Fallswick. Wooten is about 2.5 times farther away. That means longer bus rides, more time in traffic, and less time for homework, activities, and rest. Many of us currently walk or bike to Hoover, which shares a campus with Churchill. That would not be possible at Wooten. Churchill already feels like home. We go there for school events, music concerts, and sports games. Some of us even take classes there while still in middle school. We know the building, we know the people. Moving us mid-high school would isolate us from our friends, teachers, and a school community we already feel part of. Rather than spreading small new programs across many high schools, a better solution would be to make Crown High School a central, mid-county option for magnet and choice programs. That would help fill the new building, reduce overcrowding elsewhere, and promote equity by giving more students access to high-quality programs in a central location. This plan supports stability, well-being, and long-term success, while letting kids like me stay connected to the schools we've grown up with. Thank you for your time and for listening.
Thank you. Ariane, go ahead.
Hello, respected members of the board. My name is Ariane, and I'm in 7th grade at Hoover Middle School. I'm here today because I'm really worried about the boundary changes that might happen. In 2020, I was in 2nd grade, and that was when everything shut down because of COVID. I spent a lot of time doing school from home, staring at a screen. It wasn't the same. I didn't get to make the kind of friends you normally make in elementary school, and it felt really lonely. I also don't think I learned as well as I would have in a classroom. By the time I came back to school in person, I was already in 4th grade. It was hard at first. I was behind on some stuff, and I didn't really have close friends yet. But when I got to middle school, things started to get better. I worked really hard on my grades and got better at keeping up with school, and most importantly, I made finally good friends. My friends mean a lot to me. We built relationships, worked on group projects together, and cheered each other on in everything from sports and school stuff. We've made it through the hard parts of middle school together. But now I'm finding out that I might have to leave most of them behind after 9th grade. If the boundary changes happen, I'll have to go to a totally different high school than the one my friends are going to. I'll also have to leave behind any clubs, sports, or leadership roles I might get at the start of high school, just as I'm getting settled. It feels like the class of 2030 from Wayside Elementary already had a tough start. We've lost a lot of time during the pandemic and socially, and now it's like we have to go through it all over again, starting when everyone else is settled into their friend groups and teams activities. I'm asking the board to please consider keeping Wayside at Churchill. That's where I've always thought I'd go. I've been going to Churchill football games since I was little. I've always dreamed of playing on that team one day. That's where my siblings went. That's where my friends are planning to go. I don't want to lose all of that. We should not split up middle schools. Being a teenager is already hard. This is just going to make it hard. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Gavin?
My name is Gavin Yao, and I'm a rising 8th grader at Herbert Hoover Middle School. I am part of the class of 2030. Based on where I live within the Wayside Elementary School District, the 4 options in the initial school boundary study all have me attending Churchill for 9th grade and then transferring to Wooten High School in 10th grade. I came to speak today to share my concerns with you. I wanted to share my experience as an MCPS student. I attended 3 different elementary schools, Stone Mill, Wayside, and Cold Spring, which made it hard to establish a close group of friends. One change was due to moving homes, and the other change was so that I could attend the CES program at Cold Spring.
The frequent change was challenging, and so after my time at Cold Spring, I really wanted some stability and returned to my home middle school at Hoover. Fortunately, my time at Hoover has provided me with that stability. I finally found a space to be my authentic self and have met a great group of friends who support me and make going to school fun and exciting. It gave me comfort to know that the friends I made in middle school would be with me throughout my high school years too. I know that transitioning to high school will be a big change in my life, but the thought of having to start a new high school twice will make it even harder to adjust both socially and academically. I am extremely concerned about its impact on my mental health as well as my fellow classmates that may be forced to go through this change as well. I hope you will reconsider forcing kids like me to attend 2 different high schools. I believe it will be harmful for students in my grade, not only socially and academically, but also for our mental well-being. If I could stay in the same high school through my 4 years, it would help to provide stability and consistency with my support network of friends, academics, athletics, and other extracurricular activities I plan to join in high school. This applies to all MCPS students impacted by the 4 options. Well, really only one if you think about it. Thank you for listening and allowing me to share my thoughts.
Thank you. Joshua? Oh, press again. There you go. You're good, honey. It's fine.
Hello, my name is Joshua Frank, and this fall I will be in 5th grade at Farmland Elementary School. I'm in compacted math and advanced reading classes now. I want to be able to attend a school in my neighborhood with the academics that will help keep me challenged and help me be successful after I graduate. Also, studies show going on a long bus ride every day can negatively impact mental health, and it makes it hard to participate in extracurricular activities. For example, I am close to getting my black belt in karate, and if I had a long commute to and from school, kids doing activities like this, including me, would not be able to continue doing them because of how much of our day we would be spending on a bus. Thank you for listening and considering the feelings of kids in our district.
Thank you. Lucas.
Hi, I'm Lucas. I am 10 years old and I go to Farmland Elementary School. I'm here to share my thoughts on the boundary study. I really don't want to travel far away for school. Long bus rides every day means waking up earlier, getting home later, and having less time for homework, playing outside, and being with my family. Also, please don't break up our school cluster. I've grown up with kids from the nearby school. We play sports, go to birthday parties, and do other activities together. We have built strong friendships that help us feel confident and safe. Please keep my community together.
Thank you, Lucas. Lindsay Bennett.
Board of Education members. I'm a parent of 2 children at Farmland Elementary, one of which is next to me, and I'm here to share a personal story that illustrates the real impact of these decisions, not in data, but in the lives of children. My son is among the 13% of MCPS students with an IEP. He is a person that stutters, and not surprisingly has faced bullying from peers this year. But instead of retreating, he chose to educate. He has delivered a presentation on stuttering to every 4th grade class. That's over 125 students, sharing facts and strategies to help them become allies. This act of self-advocacy was only possible because of the peer-to-peer trust he's built at Farmland. That foundation he's laid is now 125 strong. He's thriving as a leader among classmates, close friends, and their families, all who stand up when newcomer comments arise. That is what neighborhood schools and community means to us. For him, for the thousands of MCPS students with added challenges, and for all of the children, including my daughter, who works very hard to build confidence among peers during these formative years, starting over in unfamiliar settings would be detrimental to their educational and emotional development. That's why introducing entirely new feeder schools into the WJ cluster, or worse, dispersing current communities, risks more than logistical disruption. It can dismantle support systems that take years to build, especially during those vulnerable middle and high school years. That's why I'm advocating for 3 things today: to keep feeder schools intact, prioritize neighborhood schools, and in the next round of the border study, consider students from rapidly growing developments who will quickly fill our schools and naturally integrate into our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to call the last 2 but public commenter to come forward, but thank you all for your comment. Last 2 is Sahel Kataria, and then is Tian Lan. Please come forward. Oh, that's going to be a very high bar. All right, so Sahir, go ahead.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Sahir Kataria, and I'm a rising junior at Northwest High School. I'm here today to share some concerns about the recent changes to the MCPS grading policy, especially how it will impact students' mental health and overall well-being. When this policy was introduced, we were told it would affect students in grades 6 through 9, but with little warning, it now includes students up to 12th grade. That means people like me, who built our schedules, GPAs, and academic goals under one system, are expected to adjust to a whole new model in the middle of high school. This isn't just a change, it's a disruption with real consequences. Not surprisingly, junior year is very challenging. Many of us are taking multiple AP courses, working part-time jobs, and preparing for college apps plus SATs. Right now, this policy is pushing more stress onto max-out students. We're not asking to be graded easily, we're asking to be treated fairly. This grading policy may also discourage students from taking harder courses just to protect their GPA. That's not what a county with one of the highest AP/IB enrollment rates in Maryland should look like. What's most concerning is how little support has been put in place to help us. The policy seems to assume that all students have easy access to counseling and mental health resources, but that's just not the reality. I personally waited over 3.5 weeks to meet with my counselor last school year over one scheduling change, and I know I'm not the only one. If students begin to see their GPAs drop on transcript and no counselor support, that can take a serious toll on their mental health. With all respect to the superintendent and his beliefs, the policy is simply detrimental, and it is unrealistic to believe that this will not have an impact on the incoming 11th and 12th graders. This change feels rushed. It feels like students were left out of the conversation, and it feels like we're being used to test out a policy that wasn't designed with our reality in mind. I'm asking the board to reconsider. Let the new policy apply to incoming middle and high school students and allow us to continue under the system we started in, and make a strong commitment to increasing access to counseling and mental health support in every school. Please join your colleague, board member Grace Rivera Oven, who has officially changed her position over this policy, and listen to the students that you serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Tian Lan, please go ahead.
My name is Tian Lan. Yes, it started. My name is Tian Lan. I'm a parent of 2 kids at Travella, and I want to thank MCPS and the BOE for the great work you have been doing in the boundary study. It's certainly a very complex process with a lot of data to analyze, with a lot of factors to consider. But at the same time, there's also a community perspective. There's a human perspective that should be given high priority. I know that we have this online survey to provide the input, but all the data does not show everything. And this already echoed in the comments by our students earlier today. And I want to say that, to share some information I have learned. In the past few weeks, I've been working with parent volunteers, with PTA members at Travella. We have done extensive community discussion. We have online chat groups with over 350 participants. We have 3 Zoom sessions. We also have community flyer campaign. We also have talked to a lot of neighbors. And we don't have time to share all the results. I have a lot of notes, a lot of reports that I can share with the board, with MCPS later. But I want to just make a few quick points. First of all, many Travella students are already facing post-COVID academic and mental health challenges combined with teacher turnovers. I don't have time to go into the details here, but as I know that changing this school assignment at this time will create new stress and will create new disruptions to our students. And this will negatively impact our students' well-being. And also, Travella is the oldest in Wooten cluster. And I talked with a lot of people from Tobytown, a historic African-American Black community. And I knocked on every door there together with another parent. And we have learned that One parent, maybe I'll just cite the words of one lady. She said, my parents went to Wooten, I went to Wooten, why changing it? So shout out to MCPS, shout out to BOE to please keep Travella in Wooten. Let's focus on the schools already having overcapacity issues and minimize the change to our community. Let's prioritize stability for our students and have guardrails for their development. And I also want to encourage the MCPS to please consider the opening of Korean High School as a unique opportunity to launch new education programs, technology education programs, given its central location, it will help better serve our community. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public comment, and I want to open up the opportunity for my colleagues to see if they have questions and comments. Ms. Stewart.
First of all, I want to thank the students for coming out today. It's true, you are a hard act to follow because you really speak from experience and from your heart. And we hear that and appreciate your perspective. I do have a question about the grading policy. I've heard that there were some technical issues, and I thought it would be good to go over that with the public.
So it is actually not technically possible for us to operate two different grading systems in the same classroom. And by that measure, at this time, we don't have the technical capability to split grades or to split classrooms and have two separate systems at the same school at the same time. So when we do make a change, as every school system in America makes changes, we do have to do it sweepingly. When we made this change to lower the expectations and adjust the grading policy down, that was done at one time across the secondary schools. And so when we have to make a change back, we are in fact having to do it all at the same time as well. So it's not by cohort. It really would require us to operate two separate systems simultaneously and require teachers to issue different grades for the same assignments or different grades for the same courses for the same work simultaneously. And that is not something that we have the capacity to do.
Thank you for that. It was brought to my attention that maybe when the state assessments came in, that those get rolled out by when you're going to graduate. So you're saying that this is a different situation.
Yeah, this literally has to do with our actual grading systems and how we grade students, and having a bespoke calculation for individual students in a specific classroom based on their grade level assignment or cohort is not within our capabilities at this time. I'm not saying that it's impossible. I'm not saying that that's not a future consideration. It's just not something that we can do at the flip of a switch.
Thank you for explaining.
Ms. Malou?
Keyword not impossible. But I do want to say that I want to commend all the students for coming out. I mean, I remember testifying at this very board a few years ago, even up until this year during my campaign. And it truly does make a difference. Your words are definitely heard, and it takes a lot, especially for the parents to get you to come out here too. So thank you for that, and your words do matter.
Ms. Silvestri?
Yes, thank you for everyone that came to testify about the boundary study. This is a process that is evolving, and we are in the community engagement gathering phase. So we want to hear from you. So thank you for making the time to come out to testify on this issue. We have options on the table in this community engagement process. Your input will help inform the next set of options that will be released later this fall. We will not make everyone happy, right? We have to make the best decision for the entire school system. So we are listening to your testimony, we are reading the emails, we're getting feedback from the survey, and we hope to put out options that meet the needs of what we're hearing from the community, because I personally do believe that you as users, you're living it every day. You know the roads, you know the communities, so your input is very valuable. And so it is my hope that the next set of options will do its best to incorporate the feedback that we are hearing from the community. But remember, we have to make decisions for the entire school system. And so that is a hard thing to do, but we will do our best, and we want to thank you so much for taking the time to testify here today.
Ms. Rivera-Owens.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry that Lucas and Joshua left, because I really wanted to commend them for their testimony, and to the students who came to testify about the boundary study. The decisions that we make are not easy, but we are a system of over 160,000 children. And I know sometimes that is hard to fathom, but that's what we have to consider as well. And it is not an intention to cause any mental health distress and so on. And trust me, as somebody who has lived at the same address for the last 23 years, who has been redistricted three times through 3 different high schools, I know how you feel. And I know the burden that can take on friendships and that, and in the community. So please know that at least some of the folks that you have on the Board of Education have your best interests at heart, but they are definitely difficult decisions that, at the end of the day, we will have to make. But with that being said, thank you for your testimony. We really appreciate it, because we need your advocacy. And I hope that you come back and advocate on other issues as well. So to the grading policy, Sahir, thank you so much for coming. You're one of the students of a group that I had met with to talk about, who wanted to meet with me from different high schools in the Up County. And I was just asked Dr. Taylor and so on, that it is a burden, I believe, on these young people who are going into their junior year and their senior year. And it is something that we really do need to take into account, how that is going to affect them when colleges are going through their transcripts and so on, because that does have an effect. And from talking to counselors and so on, they are very concerned about it. So this is something I think that we do need to bring back to the table and to have a discussion. We're not a small district, right? We're the largest district in the state of Maryland. So I don't know exactly how many juniors and seniors we're talking about. But this is what I know. I know that we are a community that we can always come up with solutions, specifically to ensure that we're doing what's in the best interest of our students. And I know that Dr. Taylor is going to turn over every rock to ensure that that happens. And that is my hope that we do. Because at the foremost, our job is to ensure that you guys have what you need without causing any stress that you're already going to encounter as you become juniors and seniors. And these are tough academic times. So thank you for taking the time to come and testify. And I know that you're speaking not just for yourself, but you're also speaking for a large group of young people, especially those from Northwest, I believe it was, Clarksburg High School, Damascus High School, and Seneca Valley. So I thank you for doing that, for coming and speaking on behalf of them. So thank you all for caring so much about our wonderful county.
Not to be repetitive, but additive, I think it's very courageous that you walk into the boardroom and provide your feedback and testimony for our consideration. And I also want to commend all of you, not only state the issue and your need, but you also suggest solutions. I think that is very helpful. We live in a community with a lot of brain power, and people know our community well. So when we listen together, we can find a path forward. So with that,
Julie.
Yeah, Ms. Wolf, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to thank all of the students who came in. It's never easy to come before the board and talk. like my colleague, I really wish Joshua and Lucas were here, not because they were the only students, but because they were such young students who got up the courage to come and speak. With regard to the grading policy, I have to say that I do have concerns, and I voiced them at the last meeting. However, I do understand that with so many different students at so many different levels, the grades oftentimes do not have just one grade level in a class, and that really would be hard for the system to deal with. But we will come up with something because we do know that it's important to you. And keep thinking about it and keep talking to us and give us your ideas. Thank you.
Can I just say +1 with both Brenda and with Grace? I would like to follow up.
Associate yourself with their
Yes,
comment.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So our next business meeting of Board of Education for public comment is on Thursday, July 24th. Sign up will be opened on Thursday, July 17th at 6 p.m. So in addition to online sign up, same day sign up in person, it's allowed when space is available. It's at a first come, first serve, and you will close at least 15 minutes before the start of open session. With that, we're going to move to item 6.1, Blueprint for Maryland's Future. It's a big topic.
It is a big topic. Thank you, Madam President. Today we'll provide you with a few key updates about what's happening with Maryland's Blueprint for the Future at the state level and connected to our local accountability work that supports MCPS student achievement and monitoring. We will have an opportunity to share and discuss specific implementation progress and the Accountability and Implementation Board's work over the next few months and what they have planned. The Maryland State Department of Education and the Blueprint Accountability and Implementation Board have been working to administer guidance and monitor the implementation of the Blueprint's rollout, and now they have taken steps to collaborate even further with us. We have developed our own new MCPS strategic plan to make us future ready. That incorporates the Blueprint's pillars, and we are fully aligned with that, so we're thrilled to report that. We can draw a fairly straight line from the state's metrics and data collection to our own local metrics embedded within the Future Ready strategic plan. Our work on the Blueprint is important to our community, to our schools, and to our staff. It supports us helping to close our gaps that we see and to raise the bar for all students across the county. MCPS is 4 years into our implementation of the Blueprint legislation, and we have measured success in not only meeting but exceeding many of the state targets, and we are the undeniable leaders in the state of Maryland. It's my pleasure to introduce our Chief Academic Officer, Nikki Hazel, and our fearless Blueprint leader, Janine Backey, who is the Director of Blueprint for Maryland's Future in the Division of Teaching and Learning, to begin today's presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Taylor. Good afternoon, President Yang and members of the board. I'm going to keep my comments very short. Today, you're going to hear updates on the Blueprint that include the specific statewide metrics that have been developed. These metrics are also mostly aligned with the MCPS strategic plan, especially ELA and math targets, as an example. These metrics will be used to evaluate successful implementation of the Blueprint across all of our LEAs statewide. So Ms. Backey is here today to share more about the collaboration at the state level and the specific metrics that guide the state's monitoring work. Ms. Backey.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Today I will provide a very brief update about information that is happening at the state level for the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. Thank you. Next. Next slide. There should be one right before then. Today we will provide an informational update about what is happening at the state. The Accountability and Implementation Board and the Maryland State Department of Education have come together to collaborate on the development of a memorandum of understanding that will help to delineate who will be responsible for which aspects of reporting and monitoring of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future to begin this school year 2025-2026. Accountability and Implementation Board will also meet with a leadership team from each of the school systems across the state to review our progress, to add dialogue about our challenges, and to evaluate successful implementation of the blueprint. And once we have been able to document successful implementation of the blueprint, the AIB will indicate to the legislature that it's time for them to release our funds for FY26 for the blueprint. Next. Here we are. There are, for the viewing public, again, there are 5 key pillars to the blueprint. The first is early childhood education and expansion. The second pillar is high-quality, diverse teachers and leaders. The third pillar is college and career readiness, including CTE. The fourth pillar is more resources to ensure all students are successful. And the fifth pillar is governance and accountability. Next. Just briefly about the Memorandum of Understanding, it's going to clarify the roles and responsibilities between the Maryland State Department of Education and the AIB, and it's going to really help with the guidance that we are provided as school systems across the state. It will identify who will give what guidance, who will provide the monitoring of certain aspects of the blueprint, and then it will provide also a point of contact in each one of those agencies to be able to help us to get information when we need it right away, and it will hopefully help to smooth the process for all the school systems in terms of guidance and implementation. Next. The AIB will be monitoring fidelity of implementation, as I mentioned earlier, for each of the school systems and MCPS, along with the other 23 LEAs. We'll have an in-person meeting with the AIB staff sometime between August 15th and October 15th, and there will be some key data metrics identified, and our data will be held up against the standards, and we will have a discussion of successes and challenges across all 5 of the pillars. And then upon successful completion of that, our funds will be released for FY26. Next. The blueprint has a set of state-aligned metrics, and there have been some preliminary metrics and key targets aligned to the key blueprint outcomes. They've already been adopted by the state to assure that blueprint-related initiatives are leading to increased outcomes for all students across the state of Maryland. Generally speaking, that includes student proficiency outcomes, chronic absenteeism, and teacher recruitment and diversity as the 3 larger issues. They will monitor the data on both the state and local levels, and additional metrics will be added as baseline data becomes available. I would just like to identify that the state has been working on this process over the last few years since the passage of the blueprint, and our own Dr. Keisha Addison was a part of the early committee for the outcome measures committee at the state level. So we're really proud of that. Next slide. And here's just a sampling of some of the metrics that the state will be using to determine if we are meeting our targets. As you can see, we're looking at ELA and math on MCAP assessments. We're looking at chronic absenteeism, and the state has already identified a baseline for this past school year and then a goal for 24, 25, and 25, 26. So they're continuing to look at some of the same state data that we are evaluating as a part of our own process, and also that are reported annually on the Maryland report card. Next slide. Also, there are specific targets that are related to workforce diversity and retention measures, related to retention of teachers of color, and retention of brand new teachers to the system. So they're also looking, that relates to Pillar 2, and they're looking at how we are working with teachers, and some of the other initiatives, such as salary supplements for national board certification and other things, are ways in which the state has been working through the blueprint to try to raise the status of teachers and incentivize the profession. Also, the starting salary reaching $60,000 or more was also a part of that. Next. There are some additional aligned metrics for which there has not been a baseline established as yet, but these are the target areas that the state will be looking at. They're going to look at the number of kindergarten students demonstrating readiness, teachers participating in each level of the career ladder. All the systems are still rolling out their levels of the career ladder, so that will be forthcoming. How many students are meeting the college and career standards before high school graduation, number of students who have completed the post-college and career pathways, and then numbers of schools with one or more psychologists or social workers. So they haven't set baseline data. They haven't gathered all the baseline data yet for these targets, but they will be forthcoming over the course of the next year. Next. And just briefly, the ties to the strategic plan. The newly revised MCPS strategic plan is fully aligned with the blueprint. The metrics embedded will capture key data points that MCPS uses to measure our local blueprint progress, and then we will also be able to benchmark against other large systems across the state who have similar demographics and similar size as MCPS. And then the state will add the additional measures after the baseline data becomes available. Next. Again, this is just a brief update on what's happening at the state level. All of these items really relate to actions that are being taken by the Accountability and Implementation Board, as well as the Maryland State Department of Education. Through the slides and the outcome measures and metrics, you should be able to see where we're looking at some of those same target measures that we're also measuring in MCPS. So you can see where the alignment exists. And we're looking forward to the evaluation visit that will be upcoming over the next few months and really having a dialogue with the Accountability and Implementation Board. What they have asked us to do is to come with a team and meet in person and to also really be frank and honest about some of the challenges that we might have faced over the last few years and perhaps bring any suggestions that we have for how we can continue to streamline some of the guidance and streamline some of our activities within the system. So next slide. And I will open up for any discussion.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Must be the new school year. I noticed that this is a new format. It's wonderful. One upgrade I noticed is presenters are listed on this slide now. It's wonderful. I'm going to open up for my colleagues for any questions or comment. Ms. Stewart.
Just one little bit of feedback. I don't see numbered pages on the, so, but I have my computer open so I can go look at the number slide. So it's slide number 7, blueprint student metrics. Do you mind drilling down on that a little bit more? Because I know you went through it, but you didn't really go through the numbers or exactly what each of these columns mean.
Okay, thank you so much for the feedback. The state is going to be looking at the data from each of the school systems, and these are some of the specific targets that they will look at the data for each school system in the state. So they will look at the percentage of third grade students who are scoring at or above proficiency level on grade 3 in English language arts on the MCAP assessment. The baseline data statewide is 46%, so that's the average across the state. And then the goal they had set for the year 2024-2025 was 51%. So they were expecting a statewide increase from 46% to 51%. And then for next year, they're expecting an even greater increase from 51% to 56%. So they will be looking at the English language arts for grade 3, and then next they will be looking at the percentage of students in grades 3 through 8 who are scoring at or above proficiency level on grade 5 MCAP assessments. And so the baseline for the state for this past year was 47%. The baseline, the goal for 24-25 was to increase up to 52%, and they're having an expectation that statewide we'd be at 57%.
So that helps because this is for the whole state, not just for Montgomery County.
Right. So we'll also be looking at our own individual data within MCPS, but we also will be able to compare with other larger counties like Anne Arundel or Prince George's, who have similar demographics and also are large-size school systems. But the state establishes its own baseline in terms of what they expect statewide, and then each individual school district will take their progress and their outcomes and benchmark it against the state as well as other counties.
And when will we drill down on our Montgomery County numbers and look by school, by area, by farms, and all of that?
We will be able to do that on an annual basis because this data will be made public through the Maryland report card.
And when do we usually?
So to answer that, the state has not released MCAP data for this most recent school year, not yet. So as soon as they do, which is typically later in the fall, we have preliminary data, but not final data. And once they do, they'll also release Maryland report card information as well. We'll get to throw a party because I think that we'll showcase that we are making improvements for sure. But that is not until after the summer, which is a little difficult for us because it's a little bit like an autopsy and not like a diagnosis. So it doesn't really help us to improve our instruction in real time because of the data timeline is so protracted at the state level. But it is that is the timeline that we're working with.
So to fill in, so we can have more recent data, do we use MAP data?
They're not perfectly correlated and not 100% aligned. It does give us some indication. We do have some preliminary information that we make some basis off of. But again, these are general brushstrokes that help with our planning versus concrete information that we don't get until actually after the start of the school year.
Thank you.
Ms. Wolf.
Thank you, Janine. A question now. These are state goals, but on page, I guess it's the couple of slides back, I just want to understand, evaluation is directly tied to approval and legislative release of fiscal year 2026 blueprint funds for MCPS. Evaluation of moving towards the goal, moving towards the state goal or MCPS goal? What goal?
That's a great question. And the answer to that is that the state will develop a preliminary template that they will populate with what data is available, because we're always subject to their timeline in terms of what data they provide. But we have been informed that for this evaluation conference process, they will develop a preliminary template, they will populate it, and they will send it to each LEA. Each LEA will have an opportunity to review, and we can, again, use other indicators or things to benchmark the data against or to review what data they provide. I don't believe that it's going to be exactly aligned with the data points that are on this slide, but they will determine some preliminary measures. They will send it to us, we'll review that, and then that will be the basis for the evaluation conversation. So it won't be these exact measures for the evaluation review, but they will give us some data based on what we have submitted over the last few years in terms of our implementation reporting and some other reports that we have supplied to them over the course of the last 2 years. So they're going to use what data they have. They haven't said exactly what it is, but they're going to use what data is available. And some of it will also be in the form of a dialogue. What progress have we made towards implementing our career advising? What progress have we made towards expanding pre-K? What progress have we made towards providing wraparound services at our community schools? Things like that. Some of these are more broad-based questions about our overall implementation and movement forward, as opposed to some of these specific targets. They are still ever working on refining what these specific outcome measures will be, but it will be a little bit more of a broad-based conversation.
Okay, my second question, and you may have answered this because I had to step out a minute. On the chronic absenteeism, you have a not applicable for 24-25. Did they change the definition or what?
This is the data that was provided for the baseline. If you look at the bottom of the slide, there's an asterisk there, and it says baseline is for 22,
and I was going to ask you, what does that, I mean, where does that fit in? Because I don't see 22 to 23%.
For the basis, for the development of this chart, They didn't want to add another line, I believe, for 2023, so they put the 2024 data and then listed the baseline that was developed from 22-23 and listed that below.
Oh, okay, because
So
it had
this
a
is their
percent
chart that
sign
they
behind.
created, yes.
And that's what was throwing me off. I thought they might have meant
So
the
it's not
fiscal
percent,
year.
it's the school
It's
year.
the school year.
It's
And I
for
thought
that
they
school
might have
year,
meant-
yes,
Okay.
22-23 is
I
for
got
the
it, I
school
got
year,
it.
Oh, okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
This is the states from their chart. This is how they have.
So the goal for 25, 26 is 15%.
Absolutely.
Okay, got you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to this way. Ms. Rivera-Ovens?
So I have a question about our community schools. And I just, since you've been involved at the state level, it's been an issue, the lack of flexibility that the counties are giving when it comes to community schools. And I heard, I don't know how reliable it is, this is what I'm going to use as you're the expert on the blueprint, that they were reconsidering giving flexibility to the counties when it comes to community schools. Can you give us an update, and maybe just an update of how many total community schools we're going to have in Montgomery County starting in the fall?
We're going to be adding 19 community schools to the 53 that we already have. The issue regarding the funding flexibility was one that was raised in the legislative session and has also been raised by the CFOs and the blueprint directors in each of the county. And there has been some flexibility in how in the directions and guidance about how community schools have been able to spend their funds. The state also recognized that there was a shortage of folks in the community schools office within the state. So during this past legislative year, they have actually expanded the community schools. They have a specific director in that office, as well as it being staffed, so that they can be able to more quickly answer some of the questions, including fiscal questions that community school directors may have. They've also developed a evaluation process, which this year will also have a fiscal component. But it is my understanding, after some long dialogues about some of the areas in which school systems needed to be able to use dollars to meet the needs of the community schools, as opposed to the structured rules that were there, that more flexibility is being given. And I think that there's even an opportunity to have some dialogue around other areas that may not be explicitly stated, but if the system can make a case for why they might need to use funds in a certain way, that they would at least be open to that dialogue. So I think a lot is happening, especially around the evaluation of community schools and the addition of the fiscal component. And I think it's a result of those questions coming from counties and those concerns being raised by counties.
As the evaluation's taking place, when are we, because I know it was hard to evaluate early on, but now we have had community schools for 3 years?
Oh, longer than that.
Longer
because
than
they gave
that,
out
right?
some of the money early under the Kerwin Commission.
Okay, that is right.
It's really that we're waiting for the state. It's not something that locally we're not doing. It's that we're waiting for the state, and they have just they're just been expanding and developing the evaluation for community schools. There was some outcry that there were just data points related to chronic absenteeism and provision of services, and that there needed to be more data collection around the academic pieces in terms of the impact of what's happening in community schools. So the state has been really doing some work towards that and really developing and expanding their evaluation program. So I don't believe that we will be able to have any real statewide data probably for at least a year. I mean,
wow.
that's what I would imagine.
Okay.
They will probably be compiling all the data from the school systems and then trying to analyze that over the course of the next several months so that they can be able to determine an impact. I do know that a little over a year ago, when we came to the board, the community schools issue came to the board, and there was a discussion for one of the subcommittees about engagement.
Right.
There were a few principals who came to speak about community schools, and one of the things that each of them highlighted was the fact that their attendance significantly increased because of the wraparound services, and the families and students really wanted to come to school because there were all of these other services that were being provided that helped to meet their needs and their interests.
Correct. So it'll be, so as we're moving to expanding community schools in Montgomery County, I know we started traditionally elementary school and then we are doing some middle school. Is there talk about high schools?
Yeah, I believe there is a high school.
We have one
that
high
is
school so
included
far.
for this year as well, yes. They use the indicators of poverty, not just the farms, to determine, so it really depends on what the indicators of poverty say. That would determine the next round of schools that will be selected. And the state actually does that selection. Even though we keep our data about poverty, the state actually assigns which schools will be selected.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Silvestri.
Thank you. I think that just kind of from a high-level perspective, so we started the blueprint several years ago. We were directed to do things every year. Money was dispersed. And now we're seeing the first 3 metrics of what we are expected to be showing for that investment and those activities. And these are just the first 3. As I'm understanding correctly, there will be other metrics developed for all the different components of the blueprint. Is that correct?
That is correct, but these are not the only ways in which the state is measuring whether or not we are successfully implementing the blueprint. So the reporting that we have, those large reports that we've submitted the last few years, that's where we really talk a little bit more in depth about the actual implementation and the aspects of the programs and what we're doing. So the state is also looking at our progress over a period of time. It's not just, it's using these metrics as a standard to say, are the students making progress in their academics? Yes, but that is not the only way in which they are measuring the successful implementation of the blueprint. So they're looking at our overall implementation. They're looking at, are we expanding access for our pre-K students in full day pre-K? Are we, how are we doing in terms of recruiting and moving more teachers into national board certification? Things like that, where you don't see a metric here, but they're still evaluating us based on that.
And in addition to that, there's program evaluations, such as the community schools, which were just
Right.
mentioned.
It has many, many legs. So these are the outcome measures that they can look at our progress in terms of what comes out on the Maryland report card. And there is a focus on English language arts and mathematics. There's a strong focus on the academic pieces, but there's also well-being and other aspects of the blueprint that they're evaluating on. So as vast and large as it is across all 5 pillars, we are being evaluated on a number of measures in addition to these outcomes.
I guess I'm also thinking about the evaluation of the blueprint itself as a reform strategy.
Yeah,
what things work of all the things that we're doing, what things don't work, are not showing any evidence. So I hope that we will have, as the blueprint implementation matures, we'll be able to say, these things are the high impact activities that we should continue to do, continue to fund, continue to implement. And these things are not showing return on investment.
Right.
Therefore, maybe we stop doing them so we can focus on the things that are showing.
Right, and there has been a lot of that conversation at the state level. There's also a updated, revised blueprint comprehensive plan. It's sort of a draft that the state has been working on for a while. They're still gathering some feedback around that. But there have been a lot of these sort of discussions during the legislative sessions because they're talking about perhaps diverting funds to one area of the blueprint or another that might be more successful. So those conversations continue to be ongoing, especially as fiscal times are tight at the state level. So those conversations will continue to happen. And then as a part of the blueprint legislation, there are dollars allocated for a statewide evaluation of the entire blueprint and the effectiveness of the entire blueprint. That was pushed back about a year, but that will be getting underway very soon. So we'll also be able to look at, from a state's perspective, has the blueprint been successful in the state of Maryland? Has it been worth the financial investment?
Yep, and we'll continue to track it in our strategic plan, of course.
Absolutely.
I have more questions, but I'll wait.
Yes, Ms. Montoya, did the hand go down, Ms. Montoya?
I did. Thank you. Everyone asked the questions that I had planned to ask. Thank you.
Okay. I think one of the questions I have is, how many years have blueprint been being implemented?
The blueprint was passed in February of 2021, but we've been working on implementation since that time, but there were some preliminary dollars that were given, especially for the startup of the community schools prior to that under the recommendations of the Kerwin Commission. But officially, it's been since 2021 that the blueprint has been put in place. And then about 6 months after that was the creation and the standing up of the entity of the Accountability and Implementation Board. So it has been a few years since we had started implementation.
Thank you. Now, my question is, in terms of these three metrics, one is still being developed, the two have been developed. Are these MCPS-specific metrics, or this is the metric for the whole state?
These are for the entire state. These are the blueprint metrics for the entire state.
So, for example, the diversity and retention metrics say percentage of new teacher of color for the entire state is 55%.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Now, one of the things that in your work with other counterparts in the state and in our continual work with state legislation and other level of government, one thing we noticed this year is we learned about we have new community schools allocated to us after the superintendent has already submitted his budget proposal to the board. So one of the things we need to look at, streamline the timing at the state level or how to work with the local level in terms of the timing of allocating community schools. And another thing in terms of community schools, out of the 4 top jurisdictions that, in terms of number of community school, MCPS is one of the top 4 school districts with the number of community schools.
Yes.
And we are the only one that have a local share of money share within the top 4, right? Some other counties also have, but they have a very small number of community schools. So that also, it's worth for us to look at how the funding is decided. Montgomery County has changed. Our poverty level has changed. Our income level has changed as a community. So I think that is more of my comment. In our collective work with different level of government, we will continue to ask about how best make blueprint work for our school system.
Right. I just want to add one comment to that because Montgomery County is subject to the wealth equalization formula. So for certain areas of the blueprint, there's an allocation that comes from the state, and then they apply the wealth equalization formula, which looks at our percentage of growth of wealth within the county. So even if our percentage of growth of wealth goes up just even a few points, that means that our local share increases and the state share decreases. So we are also subject to that. So I think that's one of the other things I want to keep in mind, that even though there may be increases in poverty, if there are increases in wealth, that's what really impacts us. So I think that we're subject to that in a number of areas across the blueprint. So I do want to point that out.
Yes.
I wish that it was based on increases in poverty, but they look at that, the wealth equalization
It's the
formula.
formula that we need to take a look at.
Yes, so, and the state applies that. It's not something that we really have control over.
It's our work with different level of government. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other question, Ms. Silvestri?
I know we touched on the data, student achievement data that's not yet available, but when will the board get updates on the current, the 3, well, student achievement is one, chronic, and
SNT?
teacher diversity. How are we planning to bring that in a memo, or how will that come to the board?
So this is somewhat clunky and painful in dealing with some of our partners at MSDE. We have an idea of where we've landed on some of those things preliminarily, but the data is not finalized and not approved by MSDE until much, much later in the summer and into the start of the school year. The Maryland report card for the previous year's performance is not released until December. And there are some barriers to that. we absolutely can look at what preliminary data that we feel pretty confident in that we can share with the board, and we would do that in a memo form.
I was thinking specifically about workforce diversity and retention.
Oh, absolutely. And we did a report for the board a few months ago that looked at the previous year, but we can absolutely recycle that again and share that with the board again from this past year. Yeah. As you know, we do hiring year round, so we do have to pick a point in time that is our cutoff time for reporting that as to the previous year's hiring data, because we're always hiring.
Okay, I guess to my larger question, so these 3 blueprint priorities the board will be updated on our status in different ways throughout the year. But
That's
we
right.
will get updates on where we stand.
And all of them are in your strategic plan too. So we've got a handy dandy scorecard to keep track of it as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think 2 of the previous presentations we've made over the last few years, we have identified that teacher retention and new teacher numbers have been a part of those presentations, I know. But I just want to reiterate that we are really subject to or at the mercy of when we get the data from the state. I know that there was some data that they asked us to collect regarding diversity hiring and other things, and we've been waiting. We were supposed to get a file from the state, and then this staff could compare that file with our information, and the local school systems have been waiting more than 6 months to get the preliminary file from the state. It just hasn't been available.
So we use both our data and their data.
Right, there are some things that we can use locally through our own data, but for some of this, we're at the mercy of the state to wait until they provide us with the data.
So to Ms. Backey's point, in particular with the hiring data, we need to verify that their data and our data line up and that they match, and that there isn't a missing set of data that reflect our true performance. And more often than not, it seems as though our shared accountability officer or human resources office has to fill in some of the blanks for some things that the state may not be aware of. And they're looking at things through a narrower lens oftentimes, like through licensure or things that they see as filters from the state level, and not necessarily through the wider aperture that we look through in the school system.
This has been, as you know, a priority of the board for as long as I've been on the board, the workforce diversity. And I think recently we're data request that's on its way to the board in terms of what are we doing differently to recruit the workforce diversity that we need in our county, because we know the challenges that are out there. So looking forward to hearing more in that follow-up about what we're doing to keep up with that.
Right, and just very briefly to really answer the question, one of the previous presentations, we talked about how human resources and talent management has been reaching out to historically Black colleges and universities, Hispanic serving institutions, Asian.
We hear that every single year, so we want to hear what's different, what's more aggressive,
Absolutely.
what's working, what's...
Understood.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and so this is a moment of celebration too. We have a very large workforce. Our full-time and part-time employees put together make up just right around 30,000 employees. And this past year, our most recent data that we've collected reflects that we are becoming more diverse. That we reported to the board, 1% more diverse out of our workforce. And although 1% doesn't feel like a big number, but in an organization our size, when you have only a small percentage that's turning over every year, of that 1%, that is actually a substantial amount in terms of a percentage of our turnover, in terms of an increase closer to 10% of an increase in our turnover. So that's actually pretty phenomenal, and we're very proud of that.
Thank you. I don't see other lights, so I thank you for this update. And it's a pity that we won't be able to have all the data at the same time and have one open discussion, and it's piecemeal. But we thank you for the information. It informs our work. And we go to item number 7.1, School Improvement Plan Development. This is an evergreen topic. I have been on the board 3 years, and every time it's a different format, it seems like. So I look forward to this presentation and conversation.
I've been looking forward to this presentation too, Madam President, and I'm going to deviate from my script and just say this. In addition to Chief of Schools, Dr. Peter Moran, and our two principals who are joining us today for this conversation, continuous improvement really does need to become the theme of Montgomery County Public Schools. We do a lot of things very well, but there are an infinite number of areas where we can continue to grow. And I'm very fond of telling our team of leaders and staff that it is impossible for us to be the absolute best at everything, but if I had to pick one thing for us to be the best at, it would be the best at getting better. And a big part of that process is our continuous improvement planning process at the school level and at the department level. One of the barriers that I observed as your new superintendent was that we had a very large, detailed, and clunky process. As a matter of fact, school improvement plans ran as long as 17 pages, 12-point single-spaced font, really intense documents that really weren't very useful to our school teams, hard to read by the community, hard to digest by the community, and not really well understood by our staff teammates. I had the opportunity to talk to our school leadership team and a number of our principals about this problem, and candidly, they rose to meet the challenge. And today, I have a couple of representatives of a team of 32 leaders in the school system, both from central services, from our school-based staff, and from experts in the field of school improvement, to talk about process improvements that they made to the school improvement plan. And so please let me welcome our Chief of Schools, Dr. Peter Moran, and the fabulous principal at Farquhar Middle School, Miss Angelica Rivas-Smith, and our fantastic new rookie principal at Westland Middle School, Miss Nicole Walker, who will lead today's presentation.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Taylor, and good afternoon, President Yang and members of the Board of Education. Like Dr. Taylor said, I'm extremely excited to be sitting next to two of our finest principals and leaders, Mrs. Smith and Ms. Walker. So as you guys know, we've come to the table, talked about school improvement before, and we have made a lot of changes in the past. Some of those changes contributed to what Dr. Taylor just described as a clunky process that was not community friendly in terms of being able to identify the goals and the actions to achieve those goals. So we've made significant changes this year to model that continuous improvement that Dr. Taylor was talking about. I want to just say that one of the things I'm most proud of as we delve into this presentation is the change in collaboration. We have had years of collaboration where there was a lack of authenticity around it, and it a lot of times was a top-down collaboration as opposed to a bottom-up collaboration. This is representative of people, principals who are going to be using this every day, being empowered to have ownership and the creative autonomy to develop something that is going to work well for them, for their staff, for their students, for their community. So today we're going to talk about the key changes that will be discussed. Here we go. So we're going to talk about making it, it connects to our previous presentation around the blueprint, MCPS Future Ready, connected to our strategic plan, and the Maryland School Report Card. Like Dr. Taylor said, it's been streamlined to a single-page focus sheet, which is was well received by all of our principals. A rowdy round of applause when they heard we were moving in that direction. They're no longer, writing literature for school improvement. So this focus, I will say though, it results in when you're very focused and your goals are very public and upfront, it results in greater accountability. Everyone knows your goals. It's very clear, easy to find them, connected to the actions that you're committed to taking. So there's a greater accountability when you've condensed something like that. The other thing that we've made that's a change is the utilization of technology for schools to access and share resources that will support their respective opportunities and needs of their school communities. If we could just go to the next. So the key change that will be discussed today is making it a more focused document and really aligning it with goal 1 of the board's strategic plan, which specifically is 100% of MCPS schools earning 4 stars or higher on the Maryland School Report Card, and improving proficiency rates by at least 50% on the report card for students that are identified as economically disadvantaged, multilingual learners, students receiving special education services, Hispanic and Latino students, and Black and African American students. Our work continues to center on equity and access to opportunity across all student groups, and we're using our data to differentiate and support students and staff to ensure student growth in all academic areas, which will be covered in greater detail by our principals. So at this time, I want to turn it over to the stars of the presentation, and specifically Ms. Walker, who's going to kick us off.
Good afternoon, everyone. We just wanted to share some highlights of the school improvement plan that a team of us have worked and created to align and streamline the process. First and foremost, it is aligned with our current strategic plan for 2025 to 2030. It aligns also with the Maryland report card and the annual targets that we have each year. So providing that alignment so it's understandable to look at, specifically in ELA, math, English language proficiency, and culture and climate. It also builds off our school improvement leader learning. As leaders, we're always first learners, and also that we take that back to our schools. So the professional development that we have had throughout the last few years is aligned with our leader learning as well. As Dr. Taylor mentioned, it is definitely streamlined in that it is a one-page document that you can look at and see everything that we're looking at to monitor on one page versus multiple pages. 17 pages is, that has happened, so it was very right about that. It's streamlined, and it's focused on the essential priorities, avoiding complex and unreadable plans. So to eliminate that barrier of being confusing, very complex, and not having that clarity is very focused, and it's easy to review, and it provides that clarity. Next slide. And I'm going to shift it over to Ms. Reva Smith.
Good afternoon. To continue Ms. Walker's points, we are really building the plan in collaboration with our school leadership teams, but the plan was designed with, like Dr. Taylor said, 32 other colleagues. There was a lot of rumbling that went down over what is actually meaningful, useful, and purposeful to us when we meet with our leadership teams on a weekly basis, and how can we strategize our efforts using this plan to drive results much more efficiently. The central services partners we have are now in a position to support our work as opposed to directing our work, which is a massive upgrade for us. And on the next slide, I'll share that we actually have 2 SIP models for schools to choose from, keyword choose, so that the school can determine the resources and tools that best serve their unique school needs. We're following the research-based Plan, Do, Study, Act cyclical process of continuous improvement, which means that we're intentionally trying strategies, assessing whether those are effective, and trying studying whether they were effective, and then making data-driven and informed next steps. And ideally, we would do that multiple times during the school year instead of waiting until December to find out if they worked. In a partnership with the school improvement plan is a monitoring plan that would be internally used only, not for public consumption, but it would delineate the strategies that we are attempting in each of the different measures to drive that improvement. And we would come back to and evaluate the effectiveness of those strategies once a quarter, again, instead of waiting until December to find out if the report card yielded the results that we were hoping for. Another upgrade that we'll talk about shortly is that we're going to have a school improvement landing page created for all of the schools to share our expertise and our knowledge. It's a very small district. We do all know each other, but it is helpful to know if I wanted to know what Nicole was doing at Westland, I would normally have to pick up the phone, call her, schedule a time. And now I can just open up her school improvement plan and see what her team has come up with, and is there any expertise that I can bring in to Farquhar, for example. So having all of our work at each other's fingertips is going to be a really nice upgrade for us. So these are the two formats that, that we came up with as a team. The one on the left is ideal for elementary and middle school. And like Ms. Walker shared, each of the 4 quadrants represents the 4 areas that are assessed in the Maryland School Report Card, with English language proficiency, well-being and climate, math, and literacy. There's also an area for us to briefly summarize how we're building the capacity of teachers, how we're building the capacity of leaders, and really how we hope the cross-functional teams to support the school efforts toward meeting our goals. The format on the right is ideal mostly for high school because high school has an additional element in their Maryland School Report Card, which includes graduation rate data and other program requirements for being college and career ready. We do want to shout out Summer Snyder, who helped us develop the format 1, and Mr. Mark Carruthers from Poolsville High School, whose team developed the high school model. We did do a lot of grappling about whether one format is best for everyone, but again, leaning on that school leadership decision to choose the format that best works for you and the goals even that make the most sense for your school to continue earning more points toward the Maryland School Report Card is important. So we preserved the 2 separate formats.
Okay. And what we spoke about briefly before is having a new school improvement landing site, which is a great site for resource for our leaders in our school system, that collaboration piece. And it provides resources for school leaders and providing that information on exemplars and looking at different other plans from other schools. Resources are at each level at elementary, middle, and high school to make sure that each level has the resources they need to build effective school improvement plans. And it also will have that database from all schools with their SHIP sharing that information across the schools and central services. So it's a nice one-stop shop to help us work together and collaborate to make sure that we are focused on student improvement.
So at this time, we'll entertain any questions that the board may have.
Oh, I am trying to read it very intensely. And first of all, thank you so much. And I really appreciate when you mentioned these 2 forms that you're using and they're designed by our principals. So this is a welcome sign to me that we're not doing top-down. We let the practitioners who knows their work, their craft, to provide the leadership in this space. I'm going to open up for comments and questions from my colleagues. Ms. Wolf.
I don't have any questions. It's just I can't see this little print very well.
That's
and
what
so
I
was just trying to understand. Okay, what I'm seeing here is academic data. Mm-hmm. But isn't that the same data that we would be seeing in the strategic plan?
Yes, it is. It is the same exact data. And even though the state doesn't show us their verified data for how MCPS did, we do have access when Pearson, for example, makes available, for example, the science MCAP data. We see how our schools have done, and so we're able to get that data directly from the source. It just takes many, many months, and it doesn't all come out at the same time. So slowly but surely, we can have some preliminary data, but it is the same exact data.
I guess I probably didn't ask the question that I'm really trying to get at. How is this a school improvement plan if it's the data that's in the strategic plan? I mean, I'm trying to figure out what is it that your school is getting from this that you don't just get out of the strategic plan?
I think the number one difference is the statement of the goals.
Are you understand?
I would just say, so this is the first time that there has been coherence between the strategic plan and the school improvement plan. So we're moving to adopting the state accountability system, which is the MSDE report card, which is on the strategic plan. In previous years, we've been going with evidence of learning, which we know was challenging for people to navigate and understand, and there was always kind of discrepancies in terms of the measurement. So there's a clear connection between the two.
Okay, but I just wanted to be, I hear you. I just want to be clear, though. where is the improvement if you're just taking the numbers out of the strategic plan?
So we have focus areas that the board has identified in the strategic plan that we should be focused on as a district. And each school is going to have numbers that are a little bit different than the district average. Some might be higher, some might be lower. And the school is able to formulate goals, strategies, and objectives, and there's a space for that on their form.
Where? I can't
Hard for you to tell.
I can't see it.
There should be blank forms also attached on board docs for you and the public to take a look at too and to spend some time with.
Okay.
But the idea behind this is to take our very big goals as a district and translate them to the school level and make the school level goals and the school level approach and the school level strategy align with what we're trying to be doing as a district.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand it so that I could explain to somebody else what makes this a unique
Brenda.
school improvement plan.
Brenda, it's this portion that you can't see.
I can see
I
some
was
of it.
like doing all this kind of thing, trying to see. This is the school
I think
specific.
what would help me more is to see one that's actually filled in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have exemplars too.
Ms. Stewart?
So I see where the strategies go in format 1. Format 2, is that where the goal is blank? Is that where the strategies would go? Anyway, you can get back to me on that. Like you said, we can see it filled in. But I would like actually to, I like your follows. Research-based plan, do study at cyclical process of continuous improvement. But this is something actually I'm craving to hear at the board level of the system overall. So I think in the few months I've been on the board, I kind of feel like I've been missing the looking at the data and then saying, and these were the strategies, and this is what happened with the strategy, and this is what didn't happen to strategy, and so we need to go back and try this other strategy, go forward. So I feel like that's what this is for the schools, but to look at it as a system so then we can evaluate, and so we understand what we can do in the budget, moving forward, et cetera. So anyway, that's my vision following your vision, and I just wanted to see if that is also your vision.
Yeah, that absolutely aligns. And so when we look at system-wide strategies, and it's important to discern the difference between something that a school may adopt as a tactic that works for that school versus something that we employ as a system. And I'll give you a distinct difference. A school principal and their instructional leadership team might say, team, we need to focus on student engagement in the classroom, and we want to have an emphasis on a turn and talk teaching strategy. And the next 2 months, we're going to observe teachers doing a turn and talk teaching strategy to get kids engaged. That's maybe not something that we're going to collect data on at a district level because it may be a strategy that a school has chosen to employ to increase engagement for their school. That might show up on a school improvement plan, or it might not. But that would be the sort of tactic that would be something definitely driven at the school level. Changing our elementary literacy approach, like CKLA, for example, would definitely be a district-wide strategy that we would say, we had a big curricular change. This particular curricular change comes with it a lot of prescriptive teaching direction. This we're going to be monitoring through the implementation over the next several years. And yes, and so you maybe haven't received end of course data, partly due to the fact that the state is not super timely in providing some of that end of course data, but you have heard some of the lessons learned, and even some teachers have come to the board table and said, this was effective or this wasn't effective, or we need to do this and we need to not do that. And so I think that absolutely aligns. And so the number of district-wide approaches and strategies may be few. The number of school strategies and tactics that the school implements may be many. And so it really is us to be selective of the handful of things that we really are monitoring at the 30,000-foot view level, because there are many campuses to monitor that may be doing things just a little bit differently based on what the school feels like they need.
I just think that I know the data is a problem, but even if there's other data sources or preliminary data, I just think it would be great if we could get some more check-ins a little bit through the year. And I don't exactly know what that looks like, but I feel like also some of our advocacy partners are craving that as well. So it's just something to talk about in the future.
Ms. Silvestri and then Ms. Rita.
Thank you. I wanted to thank you both, principals, for being here today. And Ms. Rivas-Smith, if you could tell us, I'm sorry if I missed it, just what are some tactics that you're working at Farquhar that will be in your school improvement plan for the upcoming year, just to give us kind of that concrete example of what we're talking about here.
Thank you. So, for example, the instructional learning focus at Farquhar next year is going to be examining 5 different strands of what we believe is strong instruction, from framing and objective writing, curricular rigor, differentiation, engagement, and assessment. And so we are building the capacity of teachers to examine their own practices in any of those 5 areas throughout the year. And we find that professional development is most effective when teachers have choice in what they choose to develop personally. And so we're going to have 5 different leaders of differentiated professional development to teach them strategies. So, for example, I'll be leading the one on assessment, and we'll be discussing the difference between assessing for learning and assessment of learning, and teaching teachers how to do little plan, do, study, act models with a specific curricular standard so that they can know how their students are doing in real time, make an instructional adjustment in that lesson, and then drive some kind of formative assessment at the end of a lesson to know whether the students mastered that objective, which is aligned with a curriculum standard. And so by increasing the amount of assessment points at the site of learning, we should see improvement by the end of a marking period, for example, or by the time we reach a progress check, or ideally an MCAP assessment. So that's just one very tiny example.
Yep.
But yeah, that's how granular we get.
And you're using Format 1 for your
Yes.
school improvement plan? Okay, and so where is that detail that you just mentioned? Where would that be captured in the school improvement plan?
So the you would find that probably listed in one of the 3 blue boxes at the bottom. Don't have them memorized, but I think there's one for like an instructional learning focus.
Leader learning focus, cross-functional team focus, and community engagement focus.
Yeah, so leader learning focus is going to be in building the capacity of leaders to coach their staff on those 5 areas that I mentioned.
Okay.
Where you would see the more granular information about how we go through those steps would be in the monitoring plan that our cross-functional team supports us with, our directors and supervisors that way. But the steps of the strategies that we implement are not on the one-pager, but the goal would be.
Where's climate?
Climate is in the bottom right. It's very small, I apologize, but the well-being and culture, there are a lot of metrics that the state holds us accountable to. It's that bottom right box. They include metrics like student survey, staff survey,
suspension, disproportionality, and chronic absenteeism is included in culture.
Yes, absolutely. And so we have our own ways to internally measure those things. We know we have internal records of how often students are being suspended, referred, the demographic information of that. We also have our district-wide surveys and then the state surveys that we give for the state. We won't get the state-level data on this year's surveys until probably July or August, if I'm being frank. But the other thing that's really nice is that the state has a public document that teaches us how to take our data and do the math to translate it into a projected result. So once we have our various different metrics, we can do our own math and say we have a pretty strong idea that we're going to get this percentage and likely get this many stars, but we won't know until it's revealed in December.
Okay, thank you. I have another question, but I'll wait.
Yes, Ms. Rivera-Alvis.
Okay, so I'm very visual, unfortunately, and I appreciate Ms. Sylvester's eagle eyes. So just, first of all, I think this is brilliant. I'm just going to say that because I think this brings a lot of cohesiveness into doing what is right, because even though we want to be true to the curriculum and so on, each school has their own challenges with different populations. So when I'm looking at this, so just help me understand a little bit, and for the people at home. So the school improvement plan, so you have this format on ideal for elementary school and middle school. The elementary school, this form that I'm seeing, the blue, that will be filled out by the teachers, correct?
No, so
No,
it's
okay.
the school leadership team.
So it's the school leadership team. Okay, so the school leadership team will look into the improvement of the different groups like EML, whether, and then the percentage, right? Oh, look at you, you're so sweet. Okay. So then, with the middle school, you're able then to see what they're working on,
Yes.
right? So that way, when those kiddos kind of go to your school, you have an idea of the population that's coming down the pike to you. So then you can reinforce what those kids need, per se, to kind of do the continuum of where instead of guessing, instead of, we're going to do an assessment again, this year, blah, blah. Now you have a better idea that, for the Farmer kids, you know what? They're really good at math. But this is where they're a little bit where they're lacking. The EML students are not doing very good in the English area. So we need to reinforce our team to focus on that instead of guessing.
Yes, that's correct.
I love this. Thank you. Okay, I think I got it, right? I think I got it? Okay, thanks.
All right, Ms. Montoya.
Thank you. I also really welcome this. I appreciate kind of this system-wide standardization of like the plan and the approach and the template, understanding that each school will then tailor their goals based on what their students and their school needs. I've been at a lot of different schools with a lot of different administrators, even within the same school. And in my experience, these improvement plans have varied just across the board, including sometimes I didn't even know that we had one. So I think this is really great. And I see how it could really help the professional development also, and the kind of making it easier to connect between schools and that continuum of care. The question that I have is that if I heard correctly, I heard this is internally only, it's not for public consumption. And so my question becomes, where does the community come in? How do school families see progress, goals, and hold the system to account? One of the best experiences that I had as a parent was when the school improvement plan was presented to us families. We were able to talk about the goals. We were able to engage in discussion, and then we could have continuing conversations throughout the year about how things were going, how we were receiving that, what the kids, and it just seemed to really work really well. So I guess I'm just wondering why we're presenting something here in the public, but then we're saying, okay, this is all you're going to get to see because now it's going to go behind closed doors.
I can provide some clarity to that. So the monitoring tool is the school framework to make sure that we're moving in the goal of the school improvement plan, the one-sheeter. So it's mapping out our steps on how we're going to meet those goals by who's responsible within the school and monitoring on a quarterly basis. So it's our plan book inside to make sure that we're being accountable for the monitoring and implementation and the analyzing how we're doing and progressing. The school improvement plan and the communication out to families, that's going to still stay the same. We're going to still continue that outreach. It's just providing more clarity on what it looks like and being able to explain it clearly and show how it aligns with the Maryland report card. I can give an example for myself. As Dr. Taylor mentioned, I'm a rookie principal, and I had a PTSA meeting earlier last year and trying to explain the school improvement plan and how it, and also try to provide that comparison with the Maryland report card. And it provided some confusion to families and being able to share it. I was able to provide that clarity, but it was still confusing. By having this framework and being able to go and speak to our parents and our community about it, they can actually see how we're looking at the data that the Maryland report card is providing, our school rating of what stars we are and how that aligns in the data that we're looking at to make sure that families understand that these are the core content areas that we're definitely looking at. We're looking at all students and the goal that we want to move towards to make sure that our students are being successful. So it provides it to be very clear and not as cumbersome that it has been in years past. So that helps us. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. And I did want to apologize. We didn't actually go over the information on the last slide before we entered into discussion. The two formats that are in the presentation, those are public. They will be posted on our school websites. They will be up for discussion at various PTSA meetings, especially during important times when we get a lot of data at once. Most of us do quarterly school updates with our PTSAs, and so the school improvement plan will be front and center during those conversations. The information that's in our monitoring plan is what would not be made public. However, the information in it isn't secret. We would definitely make it family friendly and talk about some of the strategies that I just shared with you, Ms. Silvestre, and say this is how we're building the capacity of teachers. It's just not in a one-page document that's posted online.
I honestly feel even more confused because I'm hearing kind of one that we are putting it, but then we're not. And so I guess I would just say the community always, in my opinion, deserves to know what the plans and the goals and the things are. And I think that to the extent that we can put it in a digestible format so that the community can understand what's going on in their own spaces, and to whatever extent they feel need to hold us to account to implement those plans, I would hope that we would always do that. I feel a little confused about what's going to be up or not in regards to this. But I just, we want to make sure the community always knows what's going on.
So exactly what you just described will be is captured on that one-page sheet that will be distributed to every family. Every family will have access to. What Ms. Walker and Ms. Smith were speaking to is the monitoring document has specific student data on it with student names. It has specific teacher names on it, so you wouldn't distribute that publicly to the community.
So the monitoring, I'm sorry, and I don't mean to interrupt, but the tools that we see in the slideshow, that is not the monitoring document.
No.
I guess that would be helpful just to, right, because we're using a lot of words, but it's unclear what we're referring to. So is it that these charts, whichever one the school elects to use, that would be, for example, on the website in the way that some schools now have their school improvement plans. But there's then another document that's internal that is more specific and detailed to the students that obviously for privacy reasons would not be.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so Ms. Silvestri and then Ms. Stewart.
Dr. Moran, my system of schools versus school system question. Every time. So we have all this great work happening at the school level, and so we want to have cohesion and consistency so that every student is having high quality education no matter where they are in the county. So how will you monitor what schools need extra support? I'm guessing cross-functional team, but how will you look at the countywide data based on school improvement? Where do you need to allocate resources so that the schools that are struggling can get the additional help that they will need? And then what do you do if a school continues to struggle year after year?
So great questions. And we just had our, I guess it wasn't just, summer's kind of flying, but 2 weeks ago we had our summer leadership academy. And one of the things that we went through with all the principals was the way we're going to tier support based off of student achievement. So taking the MSD report card score and looking at that, combining it with culture and climate data, and then determining what tier a school falls in. And we'll have 3 tiers. So I always try to explain it. It's similar to a classroom, right? And you have tiered interventions where, some receive tier 1 support, which is just that kind of core instruction. Tier 2 would be, enhanced support, maybe some pull to the side. Tier 3 would be more comprehensive and wraparound support. So using the data to identify specifically the comprehensive support that they would receive from a school. So when you have a cross-functional team, no one should expect to receive the same support. They should expect to receive the support that is based off of their student achievement data, and it shouldn't stay the same like any intervention should. So if for 6 to 8 week period of time, I'm providing, my cross-functional team is providing an intervention that is, let's say, specific to math, meeting with the math department, doing some co-teaching in classrooms, modeling some of the strategies that Mrs. Smith just shared, and then looking at what happened with the data after those 6 to 8 weeks. If you're a tier 1 school and it's just a standard support, right? What you can expect, a lot of it would just be like, on call, principal or ILTs putting in a request to receive support, maybe on CKLA. But we need to really provide, we have done a lot of work around equal services to schools. And we have talked a lot about providing equitable service to schools. This next year, schools are going to experience, the community is going to experience equitable supports through cross-functional teams, specifically based off of their data. It'll change throughout the course of the year, but we won't be providing a one-size-fits-all approach to supporting schools to achieve these goals. To the question about schools that continue to have, struggle to make progress, we're going to have cross-functional teams. And this morning I was meeting with the directors around their specific goals, which are tied to the school improvement goals for their particular schools. Some cross-functional teams are going to be really part of staff at some of those schools, working side by side with teachers, providing wraparound supports throughout the entire school year. And I don't know that we really need to wait to even see that. I think we already know from just trending data which schools those are right now. And those are the schools that would be tier 3 and receive comprehensive supports.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like maybe you need a tier 3 star. Tier 4. something different needs to happen, rather than just continuing to do the same thing and hoping that they'll come out of tier 3. But
Ms. Stewart.
Just one last comment, because now I've actually been able to, my eyes adjusted and I could see this. And especially like the format one is the one that I can actually see everything. And it really is comprehensive and great. I think this will be great to put for parents to go look at and then check in with their principals saying, oh, where are we with this? And then you mentioned quarterly updates to communities. So I don't know if that's something that could be operationalized, because I know that doesn't always happen. It just depends on schools, et cetera. So anyway, this is a great tool to ground that work, and including community engagement. So I want to thank you for that, because I know that this is a big effort, change, and it took a lot of work to put this together. So thank you.
My compliment to you is I'm looking at the elementary school and the middle school form. I can see every family can see themselves on this form. And that's what we want, that everyone knows that their school is working to help their students to succeed. Everyone can see themselves reflected on this form. So kudos to you. Then on the same regard, help me understand the high school form, that how do I see myself in the high school form? Any families, any kind of families.
So the data that you see pre-populated in the elementary and middle school model is going to be actually pre-populated by central services. It comes from the state. This is where you were last year. At the high school, because the format is different, the high school leadership teams are going to have to plug in that same data. So while the format, the picture of it that you see now is blank, all that same demographic and performance data is going to be in the high school model by the time it's front-facing to the public.
Okay. Last question. When does this come alive?
I believe the due date
Now?
is end of September.
Yeah.
Is it on the school's website now? Are they done?
It is not on the school's website now. One of the things also that I just want to plug, because I want to recognize our Office of Shared Accountability and our technology partners, is that you're not going to have to go data hunting for these things. So they're going to be populated by our Office of Shared Accountability actually and uploaded tomorrow. They'll have their data right at their fingertips. They're not going to have to go looking around for all these different data points and everything. And then we are going to go through the process of providing some feedback still on people's school improvement plans. The one box that I didn't mention, I think this is really a key piece, is we've talked a lot about shared accountability and a school system, first a system of schools. There's a box on there for the cross-functional team and how they will have a very specific goal of what types of support they will provide and what their goal for data movement will be, so that on paper and organically as we work together throughout the school year, the data is owned between central services and the school. It's not the school's data alone. We carry responsibility for the movement of that data. The final school improvement plans are due September the 15th.
Okay.
And then we'll go live and be on all school websites following that. I do want to also just go back to what Mrs. Stewart said and connect it to, again, a system of schools versus a school system. All principals will have quarterly meetings with their community where they will provide updates on the school improvement plan. So in addition to it being changed and uploaded on the website, if you want to access it that way, there'll also be the opportunity to engage in dialogue with your community around the progress that's being made or not being made, and what you're doing about it.
Thank you so much. And I think this is a wonderful discussion. I think I really learned a lot this time about our school improvement plan and very concrete steps.
I just want to thank Ms. Rivas-Smith and Ms. Walker for taking time out of your busy summer schedule to join us today.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, ladies.
We are now moved to item number 8 is for informational summary. This summary is for June 16, 2025 and June 24, 2025, 2 meetings. No action is required of the board at this time. Now there is item number 9, adjournment. I know this is always the part that gets people very excited, but today after this part, I need you to stay seated for one more moment. Okay, so may I have a motion to adjourn the open session?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. The reason that I ask you all to sit back down because we have a few business that we did not finish during the closed session. So we do need to return. So I am now ask the student member of the board to read us into closed session.
I move that the board meet in closed session to address topics listed in the posted resolution for today's closed session and for the reasons on the basis stated therein.
I second that motion.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. The open meeting is adjourned.